The insurance process currently feels scary and risky. It feels like it's going to be time-consuming, it feels like it's going to be expensive, and it feels like with all of the complexity that even though I don't know quite how, I feel like I might not be getting the best deal somewhere in it, but I don't know how that looks like. And if you look at how the technology companies have emerged over the last 20 years, they've had to deal with exactly the same challenge. They've moved people from a place of fear towards a place of confidence in technology through simplicity of interfaces, through interfaces that come across as friendly, that speak a natural human language, and that don't intimidate me with massive, scary forms and complexities that make me feel stupider than I actually am. So I think that one thing that insurance companies can learn a lot about from the world's best interface designers is friendliness, and possibly even a little bit of play.
Friendliness and playfulness are not readily associated with our business. Hey, it's a serious thing we do, life and death, in sickness and in health. But we could make ourselves friendlier to deal with and remove some of the frustrating friction, even add a bit of fun to the mix. Hello, I'm Ross Campbell, leading on digital at Gen Re and your host for this podcast series. Join me on an audio adventure that restrings highlights from our global research into compelling considerations for the future, for discussion and exploration with you, your team, your company, and our innovation partners. Episode 9 of 10.
I think a lot of the innovations often emerge from just awareness of friction or what might frustrate us or even at times piss us off. There's just friction in so many areas of our worlds. I mean, just think about retail banking, for example. Yes, we might like to do all of our banking via a mobile app these days, but oftentimes we're still forced to go into a bank branch and then put wet ink on a piece of paper to verify our identities when we could do that biometrically via thumbprint on our digital device instead. There's just so much friction built into the system. Where do you see friction? When were you last really frustrated with an experience? You know, be it in a hotel, be it with your financial services player, be it with your insurance company, be it at the post office, be it with your bank. Just ask yourself, how could we make this process a lot more human? And that sort of empathy is really where we find a lot of innovation.
The great thing is, consumers are already used to getting things done differently in new ways. The less good thing is we don't facilitate that yet, but we can.
Do not impose your business model on me, because that's the only way industry works. Because if Google arrives and does insurance differently, but actually does it a lot more like I intuitively expect it to be, then that's the model I will use.
A young person is going to have very different needs now to what the solutions that we currently provide. They're going to want the flexibility on how they engage with the companies. They're going to have far more information at the tip of their hands, from a pricing point of view, on how competitive different companies are. The way people work is going to be fundamentally different. They're going to be switching jobs far more frequently than what happened in the past. There's going to be periods of time where they don't have an income, and they're going to want far more flexibility from a premium payments point of view. And I think our products are going to have to change and allow and cater for that. The technology that we currently have, there's no reason that we shouldn't be able to handle this going forward.
So there's this model that people have become used to, which is on demand, and it's also it's kind of streaming. It's I can turn it on and I can turn it off. I don't want to get into long-term contracts, and I think that could be very relevant for insurance as well. Now, it sounds like a nightmare to manage this technically, having these decentralized computing capabilities. You could run a smart contract that literally, you can turn on and off very easily, and the transaction costs in that and the management overhead is extremely low. So that's really exciting, and I think it really plays into what people want, what young people want.
Having insurance or frankly any financial services that just happen and just do what needs to be done in the background, and they're just always one step ahead of you. And that's sort of, I guess, the gold standard that we want to get to.
I think the most brands that are succeeding in Africa are those brands that understand that there's a convergence happening. When you start to understand people's lives, you can actually create products that are actually quite inspired by how they live their lives.
Understanding people's lives, having financial services that just happens in the background and turning it on and off as you need it, that sounds different to the way life protection works right now. We can pick parts out of what we do and make them smarter using tech. Eventually, and maybe even soon, we will be expected to offer something more revolutionary.
If you wanted life insurance, there would already be an app embedded on your phone, which would pull data from other apps that you'd already inputted, such as your credit card details, your home address, the fact that you own a car, your kids' details, which are all somewhere in there, right? Just pull the data, you'd open the app, you'd say you wanted life insurance. It would probably know what you earn, yeah? And it would recommend some amount and some payment and ask you if you want it. And if you say yes, you tap yes, and a lot of your physical data should be available as well. And you should be able to close that transaction in real time. I mean, that would be the easiest way to do it. And then the millennial might go, well, what if I want some advice, right? What if I want to ask a few questions? Well, so then the first thing is kind of, you must ask it of the app, right? You don't actually want to talk to anybody. It's a pain to talk to people. Millennials don't like to talk to people either. There's computer gaming, culture, whatever it is. But get some real-time input on the stuff that you can. And then really, if necessary, I'll interact with somebody because I don't really understand the stuff. And it's kind of the last step as opposed to the first step. I think just it's about being real-time and as simple as possible. And you can't maybe get there right away, but there's a lot of stuff you could do pretty easily.
On the other extreme is something that we believe around augmented, immersive experiences. People seek immersive experiences as well. At the other end of the spectrum, what we have is individuals so comfortable with technology in the augmented worlds. What they're saying is, create this augmented me. Allow this melding between man and machine. Immerse me in a virtual world. Allow me to move the digital and human assets in my work or in my play, and give me these powers, fully well knowing that this is either a Pokemon Go or a virtual world or some sort of immersive game experience, just to enhance what it's like to feel a wow thrill. Either you're making technology drift into the background, or you're creating wow experiences that just allow the man and machine interface to just thrive.
Of the 230 main chatbots or conversational commerce platforms, a third of them are a female gender, just slightly less than a third are a male gender, but almost 40% of them are neutral. When we ask business about what persona do you think you want your chatbot or robot to have, they typically say, oh, we know that it needs to be female. Well, actually, when we ask customers, they are perfectly fine for it to be gender neutral and for them to be dealing with a virtual assistant that doesn't actually need to have necessarily human qualities. I think business yet doesn't quite understand that consumers are more advanced in the thinking around this than we know.
So it seems like we need to catch up to the customer. But where and how do we start? Karin Kruger has some thoughts.
You can start mapping your customer journey and how the customer interacts with you. And once you map every single customer and you collectively put that data together, you have a very clear picture of this is how customers interact, and here's the failure points. And sometimes it's not failure points, it's actually optimization points. And it becomes very clear which levers you can pull to either increase your revenue, reduce some cost, and overall enhance your customer experience. And again, it's something that you can run in loops and see if you change this, what will happen in the future? And is this the right course of action? And how do you back out of it? So suddenly, all of this is possible. And it's about embracing it and lifting what you have, which again, quite ironically, in a big data world, people are constantly looking for external data sources. The richest form of data lives within organizations, and 80% of that generally is untapped. It ultimately boils down to finding an area which you can control, where you have the data and you can interact easily with it, and using that information to change how you interact with your customer and start creating what feels to the customer like quite a personal connection.
I feel insurers have always had a personal connection to policyholders. We learn about their personal circumstances in ways other service suppliers never do. We have an emotional link when their lives need to be better, and our help is hugely valued. So how could technology make the connection more real, more dynamic, more helpful?
So technology can change the way that we experience insurance. What used to be a completely invisible product can now get an interface of its own. So we can start getting real-time feedback about our own insurance prospects. Insurance can break out of the app even. Where else could insurance live? Could it live directly on our favorite e-commerce store? Could it be built into my favorite fitness app? Where else and how else might I encounter insurance? So once again, I think that we come down to the idea that we've got to bust out of the current paradigm of insurance-oriented thinking as the product is one thing and it needs to be experienced one way. And we've got to get down to the fundamental truth, which is, what are the problems that insurance solves for people? How does it make people feel safer? How does it mitigate against uncertainty? And given the full range of technologies that we have available, how might we match those new technologies to solving the fundamental truth that our industry promises in new and interesting ways?
Delivering our promise in new and interesting ways puts friendliness and play on the table for consideration. How can we use technology to engage our customers in more personal, responsive, and even imaginative ways? We really want to talk to you about digital. Call your local Genry office to make that happen, or get in touch with me direct. And please join me in the next podcast to hear more insights.